Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tea Time with Tusky. It's Friday the 23rd of September, so sit back, relax with a cup of tea, prepare for the weekend, and let's chat WoW news, content, and discussion. Today in the news. There are actually very few pieces of news today, unfortunately. There just isn't too much to talk about. However, the Blues have been busy chatting with folks on the forums, so here are a few interesting tidbits for you. The first one reads, just as a note, in case you missed his other tweets while being tied down on this one, we have a tuning pass that will come with next week's restarts. You should see information on these start coming out in the next few days, but keep your eyes on our hotfix notes and at Warcraft Devs for more information. Another blue post reads, we will have to wait and see what comes from our tuning pass to understand any upcoming 7.1 changes. Asking for your patience here while we get tuning out the door before we talk too much about 7.1, which is a bit down the road. This just further reinforces the idea that you shouldn't read too deeply into data mined changes just yet, so hold your horses. Also, yesterday, Josh Allen, otherwise known as Law, posted this picture on his Twitter account. I can't believe I'm making news out of this. But apparently a lot of folks can't take a silly joke about a video game. Yeah, it's a joke. I mean, look at the last character on the list. Just, please calm down. That's literally all the news for today, so let's just move on. Today's daily tip will be about weak auras. Now, I've been asked what my weak auras are a lot, so I've put them all in a paste bin link in the description for you. I get asked this a lot, so hopefully this will help. To import the weak aura, just copy the string of numbers and letters by highlighting them and pressing Ctrl+C. Then, go into the game, open up weak auras, hit New, then Import, then paste the string. You'll get a confirmation window, and then, bam, you've got my weak auras. I've got all of them in there for my rogue right now, so that should help you out. Moving on to the screenshot of the day. This is where we look at something cool, pretty, or interesting. You can send in screenshots via twitter.com/Tusky or mail them to me. Today we'll have two screenshots because I'm a rebel like that. So the first one comes in from Joshua, who sends in an image with the text, I love being able to see one zone from the next, and I definitely agree with this. I really like the silhouette of Shaladrasil in the background here, along with this fellow's fantastic dancing. I love this shot because it's taken at a fairly low elevation. We've all seen some great stuff from High Mountain, looking down into the other zones, and yeah, that's really, really beautiful. But this screenshot also demonstrates that you can see that difference even on the ground. It's a great design choice, and I love this screenshot. All the more after you realize that, hey, you can actually see into other zones even if you're just a little bit elevated, as opposed to being really high in the air. The second screenshot comes in from Bree Sal via Twitter, who posted, my favourite place, High Mountain. I'm in love with the colour palette here, the animals, and lore. At first, I didn't think too much of this screenshot, but after looking at it for a while, I really came to appreciate the coloration of High Mountain near sunset. It looks really cool. I've never experienced this in-game, so I assume you'll only see it at sunrise or sunset, and I love those little pieces of details in World of Warcraft. So those are the screenshots of the day. Again, you can send in screenshots via twitter.com/Tusky or mail them to me. Next up, the Q&A. You can send in comments, again, via twitter.com/Tusky, you can email them to me, or simply leave them in comments. The first question comes in from Felvane, who asks, how do you manage WoW with your life? Do you ever feel like you're spending too much time on WoW? How would you stop WoW from taking over your life without resorting to being a casual? Well, first of all, I would say that being a casual isn't really a resort or even a bad thing. I might sound like a bit of a broken record player here, but players really do play this game for all kinds of reasons. My husband, for instance, is a very skilled player who's raided fairly hardcore in the past, from vanilla through to Wrath of the Lich King, and he's spent his time at level 110 fishing with his Underlight Angler and doing archaeology. That isn't a bad thing. Fun is what is most important. And I think that's how I'd like to answer your question. It's about fun at the end of the day. WoW can be a really compelling game, yes. And in the past, I have let it affect my life too much, mostly when I was a bit younger. But you have to remember that at the end of the day, it is just a game, and that real life is as important. I know, it sucks, but that is the case. There are great and important things that can develop and take root in your WoW life, like friends and relationships, but your obligation to maintaining those friendships and relationships comes from other people, not from the game itself. WoW is just a platform by which you communicate with them, and you get to do stuff with them. My advice is to just not take World of Warcraft so seriously. It's not a big deal. It really, really isn't. This is something that's always bothered me a little bit. People get so worked up about World of Warcraft, and I've had to tell myself a lot in the past that it's not that serious. I mean, over the time I've spent on YouTube, I've burnt out several times, and I've gone crazy several times as well, just because I overdo it. So my advice is just don't overdo it, remember that it's not that serious, and just find other things to take up your time as well. Being a casual isn't a bad thing, and you just have to figure out a balance. That's all it is. It's all about a balance. Jason Rogers asks, "Hey Tusky, right now I am healing as a Mistweaver monk. One thing I've been trying to work on is my utility, and when to use my utility, Tiger's Lust, on other players in my raid. Any tips?" Well, my advice is to make a macro, first of all. You're going to want to be using Tiger's Lust to help players who need to move. So, for instance, if you want to make sure you're always using Tiger's Lust on a player that needs to move out for a mechanic, which you do, then create a mouse over macro, like the one on screen, and mouse over that player, then just press the button. You'll be using the ability on them without needing to swap targets. Another suggestion is to track its cooldown using a weak aura. That way, you can see when it's going to be available. You can just go to Triggers, go to Status, and Cooldown Progress spell, type in Tiger's Lust, and you've got your weak aura. You can even create a second weak aura and change the logic in the same screen to make it show when the spell isn't on cooldown, to remind you that it's there. Oscar Holmes asks, "Hey Tusky, which zone in the Broken Isles did you find to be the most fun or interesting to level in, and why?" I have to say, I was actually surprised by how much I enjoyed High Mountain. It takes time to ramp up, but I do love so much about the zone. Its design, the lore behind the various tribes, what they're doing to defend themselves, the problems they face, and how they're uniting together. It's a really cool zone, and even though it does take time to level in thanks to the amount of traveling you have to do, that wasn't really an issue for me. I loved spending time taking in the vistas and exploring hidden caves and mountain paths. That said, the other zones are pretty close behind. I've loved leveling in Legion in general. Although really, I've also loved being maximum level in Legion, which is a really nice feeling. And finally, Gregory Korsos asks, "Hey man, as someone else who is looking to main a rogue, I am currently running Assassination and wanted to get your thoughts about Outlaw versus Assassination. Thanks." So it's important to remember that next week we are going to be getting some class tweaks, but right now Outlaw is doing extremely well in pretty much every situation. In Emerald Nightmare, you want to be Outlaw for just about every fight, save for the Dragons of Nightmare on Mythic, because that's a pure two-target fight, and Outlaw doesn't do very well on those kinds of fights. And that's kind of it. Assassination is very steady, it's a good spec, and you can do well with it, but Outlaw is just a bit further ahead right now. Which is a shame because Assassination is likely going to drop off as you gear up, and Subtlety will likely take its place and maybe even start beating Outlaw. The only thing I will say is that Outlaw is a very random spec because of Roll the Bones. I've gone Assassination on fights in normal mode, for instance, and I have beaten other rogues who have been Outlaw because they got poor rolls, and other Outlaw rogues have beaten me because they got good rolls. So that's really it right now. I know that kind of sucks, but that's just how it is. That said, I am still working on the guide for Outlaw Rogues as well, so hopefully that will help as well. That's it for the Q&A. You can send in your questions via twitter.com/Tusky, you can email me, or you can just leave a comment. Again, leave the comments in the Tea Time videos, otherwise I'm not going to answer them on this show. Finally, let's listen to a piece of music in the Opera House. So today's piece of music will be from Pandaria. Now, if you've played a lot during Mr. Pandaria, you'll likely know of the Serpent Riders and their race course. There's a great piece of music that plays during the race itself, but did you know that there's a separate and similar piece of music for the Serpent Riders? I really love this piece. Not only does it feel like heroic and virtuous, like something that would play after a long struggle, but it really sells the idea of riding atop these giant flying serpents, each one bonded to their rider, working as a team to defend Pandaria against anyone that might try and harm its land or its people. So that's going to be the piece of music for the day. Enjoy! If you have any questions for the show, any thoughts, comments, or suggestions, you can contact me using the links in the description, or you can just leave a comment. If you want to help support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon page in the description as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in the world of Warcraft.